As all members have received a copy of the call of tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. Will everyone please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the May budget meeting of the Greenwich Representative Town Meeting. My name is Tom Byrne, RTM moderator. As all members have received a copy of the minutes of our April 12 meeting, the reading of the minutes will be omitted. I do have one change that I'm aware of in the proposed minutes. The name of a District 10 member who was absent, Dora P. Williams, not Williamson. That change will be made. Are there any other proposed changes to our draft minutes? Hearing none and absent objection, the minutes as amended stand adopted upon unanimous consent. We will get right to the call. We have 3 items tonight. Is Mr. Wells here? Do we have a representative of our Legislative and Rules Committee to present item number 1? Kip Bergweger, District 8.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, yes. Resolve that the time to speak at the May RTM be limited to 3 minutes per speaker for each motion, except that the proponent and principal opponent for the motion, the latter to be determined by the moderator, shall be entitled to speak for 10 minutes each.
Thank you. That being offered on behalf of our Legislative and Rules Committee, it does not require a second. Do we need any report on this? Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
The only report is that this is a standard resolution that we have before our budget meeting. Our vote was 11-1-0 with District 1 opposed.
Thank you. Discussion on item 1. Is there any objection to this? Hearing none and absent objection, item 1 has been adopted upon unanimous consent. Item 2 now comes before us.
Item 2 is also a traditional resolution that we have for the budget meeting, so that if we are not able to finish our business by midnight tonight, it'll be adjourned until tomorrow morning tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. It is as it appears in the call.
Thank you. All right, item 2, again, having been offered on behalf of one of our committees, does not require a second and is now before us. Is there any objection to item number 2? Hearing none and absent objection, item number 2 may be adopted upon unanimous consent. That now brings us to the main business of our meeting tonight, which is the annual budget for the coming fiscal year. Stephen Walko, Chair of the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. It is my pleasure to present to you the 2010-2011 budget for your adoption this evening. Your actions this evening is a culmination of 10 months' worth of work on the part of the First Selectman's Office, the BET, the Board of Ed, and town departments to present a fiscally responsible budget to you for consideration on behalf of the residents of Greenwich. As you know, this process begins when the BET adopts its budget guidelines drafted by the Budget Committee some 8 months ago. During this period of time, the Budget Committee and members of the BET have thoroughly reviewed the budget and fulfilled its fiduciary role by presenting to you a balanced budget that meets the needs of the citizens of our town. Several public meetings are held, offering an opportunity for public input during the CIP, budget, and BET approval process. A major role of the BET is to educate the public, including the RTM, on the budget and the policies and assumptions behind it. It is critical that the BET continue to strive to offer greater public input and RTM input, as well as to invite members of the RTM to public deliberations. The BET appreciates the effort on the part of many RTM members to obtain a better understanding of this budget. Throughout the year, many of you come to us with thoughts, suggestions, and I dare say criticism concerning the budget. We listen. Let me repeat that. We do listen, and in many instances, we accept your suggestions and implement them. 2 years ago, you said, without an actual vote, do not issue bans or capitalize interest for capital expenses. We no longer do that. This year, many have urged us to review a financing program for our stormwater management program. We again listen, and the BET intends to do that over the next fiscal year, review a financing plan for what many have suggested is a $100 million program. To all of the RTM committees, especially your Budget Overview Committee and Finance Committees, I appreciate the work that went into your review of the budget. The conversations were insightful and thought-provoking. On March 18th, the BET adopted the budget after making several adjustments. These actions are summarized in my written budget message. Few, if any, predicted the recession that has besieged our nation and global community over the past 18 to 24 months. When fiscal year 11 budget guidelines were first drafted in August of 2009, the severity of the recession was probably known, but its duration is still being debated. Over the past year and a half, the BET and First Selectmen have taken steps, including the monthly monitoring of revenues and, more significantly, the laying off of town employees to address the shortfalls of revenue. I cannot understate that the decline in revenue will continue to impact the next several town budgets. The fiscal year 11 budget as presented is the second budget which seeks to address the current recession and the recession's long-term impact on future budgets. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the various parts of the operating, fixed charges, and capital budgets. The general fund and capital budget is up 5.1% over 2009-10, an increase of $16.58 million, which is primarily a result of the increase in operating budget. Capital increased from $20.3 million to $49.95 million, primarily due to the central fire station. The town's operating budget increased by 0.58% over 2009-10. And the Board of Education's operating budget increased by 4.13% over that same period, for a total operating budget increase of 2.55%. Budget-to-budget comparison reflects an increase of 8.8 positions to both the town and the Board of Ed, which results from a net reduction of the town of 2 positions and an increase of the Board of Ed to 10.8 due to an increase in student population. If you bear with me, I'm going to talk a little bit about fixed charges. It's not a sexy topic, but certainly one that drives our budget. Fixed charges account for 25% of the total operating budget and increased 18.14%. By comparison, last year's fixed charges increased by a little over 4%. $3.58 million of this $12.465 million increase represents the town's contribution to the defined benefit plan, up from $7.2 million last year. Healthcare increased $3.177 million, or 8.29%, and that reflects the trend of healthcare costs that continue to increase at rates much higher than general inflation. The BET did consider and ultimately rejected the idea of returning to self-insured platform at this time, but it's a discussion we did have, and I thought you should be aware of that. Fixed charges also include $3 million from the contingency, which explains the difference in the capital budget as described by the BET Budget Committee's message. Tonight we are requesting your authorization to appropriate $49.95 million for capital improvement projects. This amount does not include projects from the sewer improvement, sewer maintenance, parking, and golf course revolving funds. The capital plan continues to follow 3 important steps: feasibility in year 1, A&E in year 2, construction in year 3. We talked briefly about the public safety complex. Whether you call it that or the central fire station, this project generated the largest amount of attention by the BET and now the RTM. We have more in common than you actually think. Many will remember that when the police department portion of the public safety complex was being debated, the citizens were told that the public safety complex would include police, fire, and GEMS, and that Phase 1 was not contingent on Phase 2. Several years later, and after the completion of the police department portion of the public safety complex, the need to rebuild the central fire station is even greater. But then again, so is the need to understand a comprehensive facilities plans for GEMS, especially as it's been stated that GEMS cannot fit within the new central fire station. To that end, I'm sure you have all read it by now, the BET placed 3 conditions on this project. That can be found on page 5 of the budget schedules, and I urge you to go to that page at your leisure. Several other conditions are there as well pertaining to a variety of topics. Those conditions are important, and I'll state them now. Acceptance by the BET of a long-range plan for GEMS facility needs. 2, plans for a central fire station that describes the building that will be constructed. And 3, a cost estimate for the building to be constructed. If you have not seen this facility, you know and appreciate its state of disrepair. Funding or the lack of funding will not impact the funding of the Greenwich High School Auditorium and Instructional Space Project. At the very least, I urge you to vote for the $750,000 for this project so that planning may continue. And I commit to you tonight that when this project is ready for funding, the BET is also committed to taking this matter up as an interim appropriation. So, as we look out beyond fiscal year 11, is the Great Recession over? Will there be a double dip? How will the state continue to meet its obligations? Is the housing market back? How high actually can employment go? It seems like we continue to have more questions than answers concerning the financial integrity of our state and our nation. In Greenwich, revenue shortfall is the main driver of the budget dynamics. Conveyance tax revenue is down $3 million from its peak. Additionally, interest income and building permits are down $5 million and $3 million respectively. A return to historic levels of these 3 sources of non-property revenue is not expected in the short term, but alone account for $11 million, or all of the tax increase pertaining to the mill rate. The fiscal year as presented is the second budget, which once again seeks to address this recession. I've outlined for you in the budget message 5 or 4 areas that I think are significant, and I'll very briefly touch upon them. Shared services between town and Board of Ed continue to be an area that requires attention. The BT has retained a consultant. We expect that report sometime over the summer, and we will share the results of that with you. A major step forward would be the realization of efficiency as a result of having redundancy between these 2 areas. 2, during fiscal year 10, or the current fiscal year, the First Selectman and Land Use Agencies implemented CityView. It is expected that over the next fiscal year, the town will evaluate CityView, the utilization of best practices, its current goals and measurements, and the effectiveness of permit tracking. Town Hall space utilization plan for land use agencies is expected in the next fiscal year, and we hope to gain efficiencies in that arena as a result of this software. We continue to have a goal of decreasing operating budgets. The retirement incentive program improved by the RTM in fiscal year 10 has afforded the town the opportunity to evaluate 17 positions that remain vacant. In order to ensure that we have saved money as a result of the retirement incentive program, the BET moved $744,000 from those salary accounts representing those 17 positions to fixed charges. A request to fill any of the aforementioned vacant positions will require BET approval and a resulting transfer. The BET believes it struck the right balance with the proposed fiscal year 11 budget. On one side, yes, taxes are increases. On the other, the same rate of increase has been for the past 10 years. My sincere thanks to the Budget Committee led by Michael Mason, Bill Finger, Larry Simon, and Leslie Tarkington, and all of the other BET members, Mr. Mynarski, Mr. Geiger, Mr. Crary, and the town department heads, and the Board of Education for their efforts in this process. I would be remiss if I didn't extend a thank you to our First Selectman for his work on this budget. Despite what you read or hear in the media, We still have an emergency preparedness coordinator. I'm not sure what happened to the Board of Selectmen veto, but let's just say it's in the same state of disrepair as our central fire station. And so, Mr. First Selectman, thank you for proposing a budget that's kept within BET guidelines and that seeks to strike a delicate balance between serving our residents and keeping taxes low. My colleagues and I on the BET look forward to your deliberations, stand ready to address any questions that might arise tonight, and I thank you for the time to address you.
All right, will a member please move the adoption of the resolution on item number 3? The annual budget for fiscal year 2010-2011 has been moved and seconded and is now before us. Why don't we take our committee reports first, and then I will talk about our procedure tonight on the budget following those reports. So I invite our committee chairs to come forward, and William Drake, who is chair of our Budget Overview Committee.
Good evening. The budget for fiscal 2011 approved by the Board of Estimate and Taxation provides for a general fund budget of $340.8 million. This represents an increase of 5.1% from the year earlier. The anticipated increase in the mill rate is 3.38%, in line with previous year's increases and within the BET's target of 3 to 4%. Many of the important highlights I wanted to touch upon, Mr. Walko already did, and so I'll not repeat them for your benefit. Thank you. But we would like to touch on a couple of topics that were of interest, particular interest to the Budget Overview Committee. Capital spending increases from $20.3 million in the prior budget to $49.9 million, a 146% increase. The major projects are the public safety facility of $23 million and roofs, boilers, flooring, and bathrooms in the schools, which represented $10.1 million. The town's debt is projected to grow to be $132.0 million at June 30th, 2011 after this budget. That's compared to $112.8 million, which was planned for the same date in last year's budget. We have substantial capital projects upcoming, but not in this budget, which include the Greenwich High School MISA space, which is $27.8 million in the 2 years following this budget, and the Project Renew at Nathaniel Witherell, $30 million, again, outside this budget, but it's coming your way, our way. Our committee's review of the education budget indicated that the increases in spending are primarily and overwhelmingly due to the contractual cost increases of the labor contracts. Efficiencies have been sought and implemented in both the staffing models and the refinement of educational programs. Areas of continued needs to be addressed are the implications of the success system results on the staffing and building structural needs. The planning continues for the MISA space. Healthcare costs have a very large impact on this year's budget, which are likely to carry over to future years. Healthcare costs increased $3.2 million to $41.5 million, an increase of 8.3% in the 2011 budget, following a 6.5% increase the year before. This single item drives an increase of 1% in the entire town budget of $341 million. The BOC recommends that the town continue to proactively manage these costs by a combination of negotiating aggressively with insurance companies, negotiating with employees to either migrate to a lower cost option or to increase employee co-pays, and to manage the town's headcount. Reducing headcount is the most effective solution. The retirement system of the town of Greenwich is likely to require substantially growing contributions in the near future. As a result of the market losses in 2007-2008, the retirement assets declined from a peak of $348 million at the end of fiscal 07 to $255 million at the end of fiscal 2009 to $288 million at the end of March. The town's annual contribution, which is mandatory, increased from $7.2 million in the current fiscal year to $10.7 million in the budget before you. The BOC voted by a vote of 9 in favor, 1 opposed, and 2 absent to endorse the action to be proposed by the Public Works Committee to reduce the capital funds in the public safety facility from $23.05 million to $750,000. This project was originally presented to the RTM as a way to co-locate all 3 of the police and fire departments and Greenwich Emergency Medical Services. The latest preliminary planning indicates there will not be room for GEMS. The BET has set conditions to the project, as Mr. Walker presented, which will allow the BET to plan for GEMS, to see more final plans for the structure, and when the design is done, to review the costs. These are appropriate conditions. We see them the same way you do. Questions remain which will be answered as the project is worked on. What will it cost to house GEMS? Can a 4th floor be built? What is the added cost of preserving the limestone facade of the present building, which is a challenge at best? Since the project is still in planning, our vote to endorse the Public Works Committee's resolution is intended to provide that the RTM can exercise its oversight of this needed project at a later date when its planning is complete. The BOC is in favor of the project and is not seeking to impose a delay upon the project. Other than this, the BOC does not propose any other budget reductions to the budget before you. We'd like to thank the Board of Estimate and Taxation and all those who participate in the creation of this budget. It's a substantial effort. It is accomplished with responsibility. We'd particularly like to thank you for your cooperation with our committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob Brady, Chair of our Education Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members, guests. Your Education Committee met on various occasions with representatives of the departments with the accounts assigned to the committee between February and May 3rd. The committee voted on its recommendations on May 3rd. All districts were represented. The accounts assigned and the committee's reports thereon are 315, which is the Public Works Board of Ed maintenance account, $230,600. The Public Works rep was unable to stay for the committee's meeting. We therefore took no action on this item, having heard nothing on it. Account 410, Health Special Clinical. This is the $253,130. Our vote was 12-0-0. Carolyn Baisley presented the item. About $139,000 of this account is for the school's dental health program, an amount essentially unchanged from last year, or this year's budget. Program provides 2 nurses who perform dental checkups to all elementary and middle school children with referrals to dentists as appropriate. Also serves preschool children. Account 440, the Bruce Museum Management Agreement payment, $749,000. We voted 12-0-0. The Bruce Museum representative did not attend. However, the payment is based on the January 31, 1992 management agreement between the town and Bruce Museum, Inc., which provides for an annual appropriation by the town to Bruce Museum, quote, to assist BMI in meeting its operating requirements, close quote. The amount is essentially unchanged from last year. Account 440, the Bruce Museum capital expenditures. These are for security and telephone system improvements. The town owns the facility and the collection, which is secured. The committee voted 12-0-0 to recommend approval. The 600 accounts, the school operating expense, $131,191,299. Our vote was 10 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions. Board members Anderson, Moriarty, Scheer, and Superintendent Freund and many other staff members assisted us in the review of the fiscal 11 education budget. The $131 million proposed budget is 4.1% greater than the current year's budget. The education budget is about 85% payroll and related expenses. The principal drivers of the payroll budget are the number of students, the student to certified staff ratio, and the staff costs, which are embedded in the labor agreements, including steps in general wage increase. The RTM adopted the current GEA agreement at its October 2008 meeting, just before the economy broke, or just as the economy was breaking. The contract has an average general wage increase of about 3% over the 3 years, fiscal 2010 through 2012. The next agreement will come before us in about 15 months. In fiscal 11, the budget-to-budget increase in the number of students is 56 to a total of 8,863, and certified staff of 869, up 3 from last year, to maintain the 10.2 to 1 student to certified staff ratio. The other staffing change in the Board of Ed is an increase of 10 special ed professional assistants to 148. The Board of Ed repeatedly emphasized its objective of improving student outcomes. The board is continuing implementation of teacher and management programs to improve teacher performance. Data teams and the teacher evaluation and professional learning are 2 programs supporting this objectives. Objectives are to identify specific needs at different levels down to the individual for both students and teachers, and use the information to improve educational outcomes. Our vote, I said, was 10 to 0. We also took up a resolution in the committee to reduce the budget by $3 million. However, that motion was tabled. The school lunch fund, $3,854,306. We voted 12-0-0. This is the spending appropriation of the revolving fund, which supports the lunches served by schools. Principal source of money are student payments for meals. On account 680, the school capital expenditures, $12,600,000. We voted 12-0-0 to recommend. The school's capital expenditures are for major maintenance, except for $100,000 for security systems and $300,000 to remove the modular classrooms from the Western Middle School campus. The $9.3 million or so major maintenance items are roofs, plumbing, boiler replacements, and floor work. Greenwich Library, account 701, $7,351,873. We voted 12-0-0 to recommend approval of this. Library Executive Director Carol Mahoney assisted us. Excuse me. The library, including the Maine, Cos-Cob, and Byram-Schubert branches, have had substantial increases in use. Circulation, program attendance, site visitations are up more than 10%. Reference assistance and library website visits are both up 15% or more, and database visits are up 64%. The libraries are getting a lot of use. The proposed budget is 1.9% over last year's. The library, including the Peterson wing headcount, is unchanged at 64. 702 account, which is the Peterson wing. This account was set up or established when the Peterson Foundation gave the library the money to construct the Peterson wing to support the business and music collections. The separate accounting is to estimate the cost of operating the Peterson wing, which, by agreement between the town and the library, is to be operated at private, not taxpayer expense. The library estimates the cost of operating the Peterson wing, which is in account 702. The Budget Resolution 43 provides for the town to accept a gift from the library in an amount equal to the 702 appropriation, which gift is then appropriated to the 702 expenditures. The library's source of funds for account 702 is the Peterson Foundation, an entirely separate and independent foundation established to support the library. Foundation trustees have traditionally funded at about 4.5% of assets on a rolling 3-year average. This year's estimated gift is down $130,000 from last year and is expected to decline in future years. In accordance with its agreement with the town, the library is developing ways to reduce 702 expenses. The proposed budget this year is 9.6% below last year's, primarily in payroll accounts. 701 capital expenditures of $249,000. We voted 12-0-0. About $130,000 of this are for data processing and security upgrades to provide better service on-site and remote library users. The balance is for maintenance and library physical facilities. Perrott Libraries, account 710, budget of $1,392,478. Kevin McCarthy, Perrott's executive director, assisted us. Perrott's budget is 3% below last year's. The reduction is principally due to not filling a vacancy in the youth services department. As with Greenwich Library, Perrott has experienced double-digit percentage increases in activity. On the resolutions, on the Board of Ed resolutions 39 to 41, we voted 12-0-0 to recommend. These are resolutions basically authorizing the Board of Ed to receive various grants, revenues, and gifts and appropriate them to appropriate accounts. I understand there will be a proposal to make amendments to these in terms of language changes, some typos and the like. Greenwich Library budget resolutions 42 and 43, these were, we voted 12-0-0 to recommend them. These resolutions authorize the town to receive a gift from the library and appropriate it to the 702 account, and further authorizes the first selectman to execute amendments to the library town Peterson agreement. The committee voted 12-0-0 to recommend. Finally, we took up the borrowing resolution, $43,578,000. We voted in favor of this, 2 in favor, 10 opposed, no abstentions. BET Chairman Walco and BOC Vice Chairman Warzoa assisted us. Prior to considering the resolution, the committee had received the BOC report recommending a $22.8 million reduction in the bond authorization. Steve Warzoa explained the BOC position, basically that the RTM should not appropriate, excuse me, nor debt finance the appropriation of money to construct the fire station before the GEMS question is resolved, until there is design for the new station, and until there's a better definition of the construction costs. Since we'd not invited anyone from the fire department to discuss the appropriation, we didn't discuss that side of the problem. However, in light of the BOC's proposed amendments, the committee voted 210-0 on the resolution, the bonding resolution, as presented. District 1 voted yes, as it believes that there will be other amendments, and District 9 voted yes because he supports the firehouse appropriation. The 10 noes were basically because they believed that it is likely that the resolution would be amended as to amount, and did not want to go on record supporting the full $43 million amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next report, Doug Wells with the Legislative and Rules Committee report.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, Legislative and Rules Committee takes up 2 budgets. One is the Law Department budget, line item number 140. Attorney Wayne Fox addressed our committee last Monday with respect to his budget. He anticipates a continuing need for outside counsel. In this fiscal year coming up, the outside counsel will account for approximately 40% of the total Law Department budget. He believes that the outside counsel will be necessary in order to defend against certain cases in the next fiscal year. There is also a 250% increase in expert witness fees that he is budgeted for in the next fiscal year. This is a dramatic increase which is going to be driven primarily by 3 lawsuits. One will be the case with Worth Construction, as well as a wrongful death case and a mold case. He anticipates that the expert witness fees will be necessary for the litigation in those 3 cases. Our vote in the Law Department budget was 12-0-0. We also took up the probate court budget. It's a very small item because the cost of the personnel for that department is paid for by the fees. The cost there has actually decreased by 25%. That is primarily because in this fiscal year they purchased a document scanner, and the cost for maintaining document imaging and providing by state law that is required, that should provide for a decrease in the cost of document imaging going forward. Our vote on the probate court budget was 12-0-0. We also took up the budget and bonding resolutions. We voted on those 12-0-0. However, those are with certain language changes, so that at the appropriate time we'll make those changes.
Thank you. Our next report, Karen Sadekhan, Chair of our Parks and Recreation Committee.
Good evening. We met last Tuesday night. Every district was represented except District 1. We had with us Joseph Sliana, who's head of the Department of Parks and Rec, Tom Greco, and then we had Lou Berlingo from the Griff Golf Course, and we had Bill Finger from the BET. We took 4 votes. The PNR operating budget the PNR capital budget, the Griff Golf Course, operating and capital we voted on together, and then we voted on the budget resolutions. The Parks and Rec operating budget is extremely straightforward with a net cost of operation down 5.3% to $5,609,899. The total operating cost is $9,573,306. Revenue is up slightly, $100,000, due mainly to increase in user fees, 2.6%. Tree fines and also participation numbers have increased. For the past 5 years, the operating budget has been reduced with outsourcing. Since 2006, the headcount has been reduced from 126 to 102, really 101, since one head is charged in fixed charges. The department plans to provide the same services with this decreased budget. We had looked at it carefully. The committee divided up the codes, and we're very satisfied with the numbers that Joe and the department had come up with, and we voted 11-0-0. As far as the capital budget, there are 16 items. Many of these items are mandated, some are improvements, and many are also ongoing maintenance. And I'll go through them since there are only 16. We have a ferry life jacket replacement system of $25,000. This is mandated by the U.S. Coast Guard. We have a GPS tracking system also mandated by the Coast Guard for $25,000. We have the continuation of the organic turf program for $275,000, and the department was actually able to reduce this figure. It had been in the 300s. We have ongoing playground inspection and upgrade programs for $25,000. We have renovation and maintenance program for athletic fields. This is ongoing at $189,000. We have tennis and basketball maintenance programs ongoing for $50,000. We have then the Marina Pier rebuilding program in the Coscob Marina for $50,000. We are replacing the workboat outboard motor on Skipper 2 for $16,500. There's an athletic field mower at $45,000. We have the replacement of the Greenwich Point water line for $175,000. We have the relocation of the Grass Island electric underground service for $75,000. It's a safety issue with currently overhead wires that are too low for sailboat masts to clear. We have a continuation of park lighting. This time the upgrade is in the Montgomery Pine Needham Park for $82,000. We have the Coscob Marina retaining wall replacement. This is a big one, $600,000. We have dredging of the Coscob Marina. This is only for the engineering studies, $100,000. We have vehicle replacement, Parks and Trees, Department, $72,000, and another vehicle replacement for Marine and Facilities at $186,000. The vote was 10-1-0. District 4 voted no because they had concern over the need and cost of the vehicle replacements. We then took up the Griff Golf Course. The total cost is flat with a small decrease of 0.5% in the net cost of operation at $1,912,366 versus $1,921,823 for last year. Revenue is down about 3.9%. in part due to the accounting on the calendar year and some reduced usage. Fee increases should add about $54,000 to revenue for this budget. The vote was 11-0-0. We looked at the Griff capital budget items, very small this year. $125,000 is the total. There's a landscaping and turf equipment request for $75,000, cart path upgrade for $25,000, and planning for master plan projects, $25,000. The vote was 11-0-0. At the end of the review, before we went to the resolutions, Bill Finger from the BET commented that when the Budget Committee reviewed Parks and Rec's budget, one of their main questions was, did they have enough money to provide, to deliver the necessary services? The department said yes. In our opinion, they've done a good job with their budget, what they call their bottom-up budget. We also reviewed the budget resolutions that were relevant to Parks and Rec, which you can see, numbers 44 through 48 in the resolution section, and the vote was 11-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Crowell, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow members and guests. The Public Works Committee met last Monday evening in the Mazza Room at Town Hall. 11 districts were represented. District 4 was not represented. We also had as guests from the Town of Greenwich Department of Public Works, Commissioner Amy Siebert, Deputy Commissioner David Thompson, Joseph Roberto, William McCormick, Richard Feminella, and Alan Manelli. From the Board of Estimate and Taxation, we had joining us Michael Mason, Leslie Tarkenton, and Mr. Stephen Walko. From the Budget Overview Committee, we also had Louisa Stone and Anthony Discoli. And also with us was Mr. Kip Bergweger, wearing his cap as chairman of the Pedestrian Safety Committee. We thank all of you for your assistance in our deliberations and attending our meeting. The meeting began and focused briefly on the operating budget, as most of the work that the Public Works Committee had done was done prior to our meeting this Monday night. We had begun back at the beginning of the year reviewing the budget that had come out and had several working meetings and meetings with the commissioner to review the different items, and were able to kind of bubble to the surface, if you will, the hot topics. In our discussions over the operating budget, we had talked about certain ones that stood out, such as the standby time expense, which seemed to increase over the last couple of years. It was explained to us by the commissioner that the change in the way they are handling the stipend for standby time is hopefully going to help reduce what we're paying now in overtime. That certain employees will get a monthly stipend for being on standby, and if they have to answer the phone or do something as simple as dispatch personnel, it will not be billed as overtime, that it'll be included in this monthly stipend. Whereas in the past, anytime that they did any service for the town, it was billed out as overtime. So we're hopeful to see improvements in those areas. Electrical expense, although this line item seemed to increase a little bit, Ms. Siebert pointed out that the town has done a very good job in purchasing his electricity. And what is also included in there, however, is a couple of other buildings that have now come online. The public safety building, the police part of the public safety building is now online. The art barn, et cetera, have come into the electrical charges, and the current expenses were in line with previous years. So we've done a good job in that area. One of the areas that we did spend a great amount of time on in the operating was the regular salaries. As Mr. Walko had mentioned earlier, there are a number of full-time positions that the BET has placed into the fixed charges account. 7 of those, or 8, depending how you look at it, are employees from the Department of Public Works. Mrs. Siebert has explained that of the 127 full-time employees that we currently have, which is down from about 147 in prior years, where we had about a 20-person headcount reduction last year, that there always seems to be some vacancies. Obviously, the 6 or 8 that are there now represent about 6% of the total headcount. And these are, if you will, the worker bees, the people that get our jobs done within the Public Works. Ms. Siebert fully plans on trying to go back to the BET to fill these positions, although the BET will be reviewing them at their HR level. It is important that we be sure to support this. I know that there may be some, and the committee talked about potentially some reduction in or moving this money out of the budget, but the Public Works Committee felt strongly that these positions in our review would be necessary down the road. We've asked that the Public Works Department run lean, run tight, fill the positions as needed. Obviously, as we approve this budget tonight, the Public Works Committee will have a better idea of what the projects are that stand before them. There's also been a stronger call to get more aggressive about our stormwater management and planning. These positions will be important to have in the workforce in order to do a lot of this work in-house and not potentially incur outsourcing or overtime expenses within the budget. So we were satisfied with Ms. Siebert's explanation, although we understand that she will have to go to the BET to get the money appropriated under the current program. We felt as though that was justified, so that we do keep an eye on the headcount, as was pointed out by our chairman from the Budget Overview Committee. Obviously, our headcount is our strongest expense, and we would agree that in order to reduce expenses, we should be able to do that. However, we should have a plan. And if we're going to continue to put out the number of projects that we want the town to complete and expect the level of service that we have currently, then we have to do that in a balanced fashion, not just go out there and say, okay, we want to appropriate all of this money to do capital projects and keep a level of service out there, but we want you to do it with fewer and fewer people. That becomes difficult for staff to maintain, so we want to be cautious of that. One of the other areas that we had talked briefly about was the waste removal from the town, which is about a $6 million line item. There was some discussion, although not any sort of motion being made at this point in time, but something that we should be reviewing and the Public Works Committee will be looking at is the tipping fees at our weigh station to help, in a sense, recover some of those expenses for the town. But that'll be something that we'll be looking at in the future. We then moved on to the capital budget, and we did spend a considerable amount of time in the past and coming up talking about the stormwater management and control issues. Mrs. Siebert was felt it important to point out that we need to distinguish between flooding issues and drainage network capacity issues. This will help us clarify the number of projects and prioritize what is going to be coming up in the future. Currently, there is a list of about 41 projects that the Flood and Erosion Control has put forward. Mrs. Siebert explained that that list is available at the town hall and has been offered at a couple of public meetings already that have a number of those projects outlined. However, she also explained that currently there is a line on that project which there's about 10 of the projects on the top of that list that are kind of critical issues that are or would be issues to public safety, whereas potentially police or fire vehicles or something like that could not get through a road or an overpass if it were flooded. And the rest of the issues are issues that would be things that we should be looking at and should be doing down the road to continually upgrade our system. Although we have heard from several constituents that maybe there needs to be more done for the flood and erosion control in the town, and as much as the Public Works Committee agrees and we will stay focused on it, Mrs. Siebert did point out that she felt in talking with Public Works commissioners and other communities that the town of Greenwich was far ahead of most other communities in Fairfield County. We probably could have spent all evening talking about this subject, but we were focused on the budget items and had no adjustments to any items having to do with the flooding and erosion control. We took up the issue of Hearthstone Drive sidewalk project. We had Mr. Warren Baroom and Ms. Ann Friedman come speak to the committee in trying to ask the committee to reduce the appropriation. They felt that the sidewalks in this area were unnecessary and an unnecessary expense to the town. As I mentioned earlier, joining us at the time was Mr. Kip Bergweger, who was chair of the Pedestrian Safety Committee. Mr. Bergweger explained the lengthy and detailed process that this committee had just recently gone through in identifying the areas in town where pedestrian safety should be a priority. Hearthstone Drive had scored a 90 of their scoring criteria, which was well above the 80 minimum, which would have put it on a threshold for public need. He went through a whole explanation of what that committee went through, and we were very impressed with their work. Mr. Thompson also responded that once the recommendations had been made from the safety committee, that they had also taken it into their criteria within the town's facilities, reviewed what projects could be done on a more expedited basis, whereby looking at whether or not certain areas needed easements, blasting, removal of trees, whatever significant construction obstacles may lay in their way. And this project came to the top as one of the ones that they can get done in an ongoing process to improve pedestrian safety in town. At the conclusion of our discussion, the Public Works Committee took no action on this item. There was no motion to reduce, and we tabled the item and took no action. The balance of the meeting then focused along the Central Fire Station project, as you've heard from Mr. Walko and our chairman from the from the Budget Overview Committee. This item probably took up the majority of our time, and we went through it from top to bottom. When we're through with it, 2 points that have not been made should come out. I think first and foremost is the fact that it has been reported that this project is on budget. Well, obviously, it is on budget when we had originally thought that GEMS would be included in the fire station. Obviously, the cost overrun in the public safety complex will now be the fact that we have to supply another home for GEMS. So what's on budget is the home for the police department and the fire. Our cost overruns will come out in the end when we figure out what we're going to do with GEMS, and that's what we don't know of yet. So we don't even know what the cost overruns are going to be for the entire public safety complex. What we were concerned about, and our discussion focused around as well, was the fact that the BET had conditioned the approval of this building to provide them with the plans for GEMS, plans for the building, and identify the needs of the other uses that would be there. Without additional planning money, we did not feel as though the Public Works Committee could provide the RTM, the BET, or the town planning agencies with the proper representation of what would be required in order to accomplish those tasks. So we focused on the fact that we would need to add some money to the BOC resolution, which we had privy to, which had allowed only $200,000, reduced the appropriation to allow a remaining fund of $200,000 to cover the current lease that the fire administration have on Holly Hill. Although the budget overview had done a good job in reviewing the item, we felt as though in order to properly give the town what it needs and to keep this project moving, because I think everybody understands the need to improve the fire station downtown. Whether it has gems or not, we'll work that through. We need to understand those things. We want to see a plan for all of these departments. We want to put them in the proper homes once and make sure that we move forward in the proper fashion. We wanted to make sure that the funds would be there so that the folks in DPW who are really in the middle of this, just doing the planning stages and trying to get the building through once all of the different departments can determine the needs, we voted to increase the appropriation, or I should say, increase the amount that was left in the line item by $550,000 so that there'd be a total of $750,000, reducing the original appropriation from the $22,050,000 to $22,200,000, I think is what it comes out to. So that motion was made by the gentleman from District 1 and was voted on unanimously, 11-0-0, with all districts that were present voting in favor of the item. When all said was done, we put together one single vote on the entire budget as we amended it, and the entire budget was 11-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Gordon Ennis, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, members of the RTM, town officials, and guests. Your Finance Committee met May 3rd at 7:30 p.m. in the Town Hall Lounge. The committee had previously divided itself into 8 subcommittees referred to as GO teams. Each team was assigned a specific area of review in the budget. Last Monday, as teams presented their findings, they were questioned in ways that would amplify certain points. A vote was taken at the conclusion of each team's presentation regarding that area of the budget. All of those votes were 12-0-0. A detailed written report was distributed last Wednesday to members of the Finance Committee, or by members of the Finance Committee, to all the districts. I hope that all of you have seen that. It's about 8 to 10 pages, and because it was distributed previously, I'm not going to read it tonight. Big hand, please. Thank you. So I have a very short report. I'll tell you what happened. After we finished the team presentations, we had reserved 3 issues to be debated at the end of the presentations. So we went through the entire budget, listening to each team. When that was finished, we went back and visited the 3 issues that we had almost by acclamation determined to be items we wanted to spend more time on, and they were the firehouse, the central fire station, the long-term borrowing position of the town, and finally a salary adjustment account that is contained inside the fixed charges under employee benefits. We had a long discussion about that, and the first vote that was taken was a motion to reduce the funding for the Central Fire Station from $23,050,000 to $750,000, a reduction of $22.3 million. The motion was carried by a vote of 10-0. The no votes were cast by Districts 4 and 12. District 4 was concerned about the potential for lost time in the project because it is an important project. District 12 believes that DPW is close enough to a final resolution that we should proceed anyway. The majority of the committee, however, relied on the following for its decision. The current cost to build the new facility is not yet known. We have not seen a construction plan for the building, and in fact, the floor plan for the apparatus and other equipment is still under discussion. There's no facility solution for GEMS administrative offices, vehicle garaging, or training. And if the GEMS solution is independent of the central fire station, the estimates that we heard were up to $5 million. So, as Rick Kroll stated, that's going to compound our total cost. So you have to, in order to determine the total cost of the safety complex, you have to add in what we've spent so far on the police building, what we intend to spend renovating the central fire station, plus what is going to be necessary to find a house for GEMS. And the concept was originally promoted to the RTM as a safety complex, a community safety complex that would house all three. So people had an expectation that that was what was going to happen, and that expectation wasn't met. The result of the action we took, I think, will give the RTM another look at the funding for the Central Fire Station when the plans are complete. The fact is, no one voted to remove this money because they don't think that the Central Fire Station is a broken building that needs to be replaced. Everyone pretty much agrees that that's the situation. But we want to see a plan first. So what we will fund, and that's what is made up in the $750,000, is a continuation of the fire lease, the administration lease that exists now. That's $200,000. And an additional fund to complete the A&E, so that can go on. Then the project and the related bond issuance should not be delayed or minimally delayed. The RTM will continue to retain some control because we'll have another look at this project before it goes out to be built. And finally, the $750,000 can be funded by the eventual bond issue anyway. So that was the thinking on the Central Fire Station. With respect to the salary adjustment account, which is contained in the fixed charges under employee benefits, a motion was made and seconded to reduce fixed charges line 901 employee benefits, object code 57960, salary adjustment account, from $894,577 to $150,000, a reduction of $744,577. The motion passed by a vote of 9-3-0. No votes cast by districts 4, 2, and 9, essentially for the same reason. They see that this is a BET prerogative and believe this action is micromanaging by the RTM. The balance of the committee felt that there are several data points which argue to move this money out of employee benefits and reduce the budget accordingly. First of all, there are no requests to fill orders as of February 2nd, which is the date that was used to base the allocation in the fixed charges in the first place. And as far as we know, there was no request to fill any of these 11 vacancies as of April 30th. Some BET members and others believe the town doesn't need these specific 11 jobs. The TO&E of the department should be changed. It's not to say they don't need the 11 jobs. It's that they don't need these 11 jobs. So it's not the same thing as saying that we don't need these jobs, we need different positions. It does say, however, that TO&E needs to be changed. Where these 11 vacancies exist, they should be changed to better reflect the existing departmental organization or the proposed reorganization. If the BET wants to reinstate the money into the risk reserve, for example, perfectly fine with us. The conditions placed on these jobs by the BET, perfectly fine with us. But we don't think that the money belongs in employee benefits, and we don't think it should be hanging as a salary adjustment account. A specific BET request for these positions is required even if the funds remain in that position, so we're not encumbering the departments much more than an RTM meeting. Finally, it's not prudent, we think, to overstate the fixed charges line or the employee benefits account by a $750 fund when the money might be better positioned in the risk reserve and perhaps enhance the town's rating. At any rate, those were the arguments that we entertained. We also had a long discussion on the town's borrowing philosophy and how best to approach these capital projects to mitigate their impact on tax levies. We took no vote, however, but I expect that you'll hear more from us on that subject as the year progresses. In the meantime, when the resolution for the budget did come to the floor, it was passed by the entire committee on a vote of 12-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Peter Berg with the Land Use Committee report.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, fellow members, guests. The Land Use Committee met last Monday night at Town Hall. We were assisted by both Jeff Raymer and Stephen Walco of the BET. We took up the land use departments. We also took up the highway, bridges, streets and bridges, item 312. We had Mr. Dave Thompson and Joe Roberto with us. They did a review both of their operating budget and capital projects. Although not the firehouse, we did take a vote, which was 11-0-1. That was one abstention. We then took up the land use departments, which are 171 Planning and Zoning Commission. We had Katie Blankley, our Assistant Town Planner, with us. 172, the Conservation Commission. We had Denise Savageau, the Conservation Director. 173, Inland Wetlands. We had Michael Chambers, our Director of the Inland Wetlands Department. And 174, the Land Use Administration. In the Planning and Zoning Commission, you should know that there's a $50,000 item for traffic engineer consultant. That's a new item made necessary by the fact that we no longer have a traffic engineer on staff. Most applications, as you know, that go through planning and zoning require a review by a traffic consultant, so we're using outside consultants for that purpose. There's also $20,000 in consulting money for ongoing planning and zoning projects, including the committees that were spun off of the POCD last year. We did have a discussion around the City View software that Mr. Walco referred to earlier. We were told that this is a $1 million project. The software is actually being funded out of the data processing division. But this is software that's going to span all of the land use departments. We were told there are no promised position savings from this software. The justification apparently is based on improved coordination among the departments and improved service to the public. However, you did hear Mr. Walco say earlier that the BET will be reviewing the impact of this software as it gets up and running. Perhaps there will be some savings along the way. All of these departments have small staffs and no change in staff. Both planning and zoning and particularly inland wetlands have significant revenues from applications. Inland wetlands revenues in some years are nearly cover their entire operating budget. But in both cases, because as you know, the number of applications is significantly down, the revenues are down, and yet we're not seeing any staff reductions because these are small staffs. So at this point, the staffs are remaining the same, even though their revenues are down. We did take a vote on these budgets. Our votes were 12-0-0.
Thank you. Dr. Karen Fosiliotis with the report of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. The Health and Human Services Committee met last Tuesday. Nancy Barton from the BET was present to assist us in reviewing the budgets. We reviewed 4 departments, the Commission on Aging. I'll do first. The Commission on Aging took over transportation of non-employees from the First Selectmen's budget. This is the Share at the Fair taxi program in which seniors can buy a $10 book of taxi tickets for $5. The town subsidizes 40% of this, seniors 50%, and the taxi company 10%. The line item is 52 $52,130 and totals $7,500. The program is important because Tag and Call a Ride does not operate after 4 p.m. on weekends, and it allows seniors to use the taxi service at a reduced rate. The budget item is not spent unless it is used and is returned to the general fund if not spent. There were 800 rides last year that utilized the program, and the program has been in effect for 8 years. Since completing their market analysis and space analysis, the Commission on Aging have initiated program changes, including the planned hiring of certified individuals to run their programs. They're currently looking at the food service company that services the Nathaniel Witherell, and by utilizing this service, it would satisfy their menu planning by a certified dietitian and their need to provide therapeutic meals and other dietary needs, such as watching salt content and food allergy concerns. They anticipate a 13.5% savings if this food service company is utilized. On the program side, they eliminated 2 part-time program planners and are looking for a full-time program coordinator. New programs that they've initiated that are screaming success are Tai Chi, coming to a park near you, waterborne exercise at the Boys and Girls Clubs, Yoga Lattes, which is yoga and Pilates, and Zumba, which is not that little thing that goes around your cleaning your house, but is a Brazilian-based exercise program for balance and muscle strength. For the less physically challenged, there's also an art program, and the art is for sale. The Commission on Aging expressed their need for capital for a new or renovated facility. The latter they anticipated would require a minimum of $14 million and is really impractical based on the structure of the building. They are awaiting the results from the Downtown POCD Committee and the Board of Ed decision as to their Havemeyer building before putting in a request for capital. The Health Committee voted 11-0-0, District 1 absent, to approve their budget. Health Department. The Health Department budget for 2010-11 represents a 1.8% increase over 2009-10. 83% of the budget is salaries. They have no capital projects planned. They generate approximately $332,000 worth of revenue, which they give to the general fund. This year, they vaccinated 7,000 people with 13 clinics for the flu vaccination. They've had to, this year, turn down a lead grant due to the lack of personnel. They didn't feel they could manage the program effectively. Last year, their screening for lead resulted in finding 2 children out of 250 with increased lead levels. While it's an important program, their feeling was if they couldn't do it correctly, they didn't want to accept the money. They currently have a part-time emergency coordinator that is funded through a grant. It is likely that the individual that is currently servicing this position will not be there because they're looking for a full-time job, and it's difficult to hire for the position on a part-time basis. They stress the need for a full-time emergency coordinator, and this was drastically seen during the March storm. For some reason, the Health Department was not called to the table, and they are evaluating why that happened. The Health Committee voted 11-0-0, District 1 absent, to approve their budget. The committee notes that the Health Department is as lean as they can go, and it's recommended that the budget be looked at carefully next year. GEM's operational budget is approximately $3.5 million that is funded by the town. Their capital budget is funded through donations, and they are ahead of last year's fundraising. They have raised $7 million since 1991, and the funds are used for buying their ambulances, office equipment, and any other capital expenditures. The call volume for GEMS has increased. Their cardiac save rate is 34 to 38%. And we asked, well, how does that compare to other places? If you look at Seattle, their cardiac save rate is only 16%, so we are well above the national average. Of 5,200 calls per year, they transport approximately 4,200 individuals, and 65% of these require advanced life support. GEMS has proposed expanding the Station 4 at King Street from 12 hours per day to 24/7 at a cost of $185,000. A discussion as to the amount of space required by GEMS was also held. GEMS had submitted their space needs to the town in 2004, And I actually circulated their evaluation to district chairs earlier today. I know it was late in the game. With the exception of the addition of one office space, this evaluation remains unchanged. They don't currently have anything in the capital for this. They did in the past, but it was removed. And it should also be noted that the current headquarters in Riverside is being rented at a cost of $216,000 per year. The committee voted 10-0-1. District 2 abstained. District 2 voiced concern about the cost of expanding Station 4, feeling that in this fiscal climate we shouldn't be doing that. District 1 was absent. Okay, let me take my breath. Social services. Social services actually had a budget reduction of 5.8%. Due to an increase in clients because of the financial meltdown, the department has significantly reduced its costs per client. However, the committee cautioned the department that when the financial meltdown ever subsides, they will need to take a look at their core services to determine whether they are providing the necessary services in a cost-effective way. We estimated that the cost per client was reduced from about $170 per client to $110 per client based on just the volume increase. But we also are concerned because the majority, although they claim that they do look at the whole package when a person comes in, if you look at the statistics that they show you, the majority is spent on energy assistance, which is primarily assisting people in filling out the forms to get energy assistance. It was felt that perhaps we could look at that program and do what we do with tax preparation and have seniors, for example, assist people instead of tying up a social worker. So these are the things that they are looking at. They are doing a strategic plan. They are also planning on looking at staffing levels, and we're looking forward to that discussion. The board is looking for a new commissioner, is doing a limited regional search, and hopes to fill the position soon. The vote was 11-0-0, District 1 absent. Finally, Witherell. Witherell is currently looking at approximately $190,000 favorable operating budget compared to a $32,000 loss last year. There's no net change in staffing. This is the first year that they are functioning as a revolving fund, which the board stress means that any surplus they generate goes to the general fund. However, if they require money, that will also have a negative impact on the general fund, but they're not anticipating asking for any money this year, except for Project Renew, which we did not discuss. Currently, their patient census is down, and the feeling is that this is due to decreased referrals from Greenwich Hospital, where their census is also down. However, they feel that due to their payer mix, currently 60% Medicaid, 40% other payers, they have still managed to be in the black, and they anticipate to be in the black by year's end. The committee voted to approve their budget, 11-0-0, District 1 absent. It should be noted that a separate vote was also made on the resolutions on grants and receipts. I understand that legislative and rules may also have the same changes that we had, so I will defer to legislative and rules, but we'll reserve the right to come back and present our changes if they're not incorporated.
Thank you. Dr. Evan Delman with the report of our Town Services Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Your Town Services Committee met last Tuesday night, and all districts were present. We reviewed item 101, the RTM, with Carmela Butkins. We're in good shape. We'd like to see more email and less postage. 104, emergency operations with Daniel Warzoa. As you know, that budget has been cut by 28%. Nothing else has changed. 105, the First Selectman's Office. We met with Mr. Tessie and Mr. Carreri. That budget is down 2%. The First Selectman requested that all departments decrease non-salary expenses 10%. The First Selectman's budget carries $120,000 that is used elsewhere in the town. $92,000 of that is SWERPA and the Connecticut Conference of Municipality dues. The First Selectman's budget is a catch-all for all groups that need assistance from the town. 106 and 107 we reviewed together. That's purchasing and administrative services with Joan Sullivan and Michelle Hackett. The front desk person, that spot was eliminated in the layoffs, and they must fill that spot with one of their own personnel. There's more than just answering the phone. They also do the booking of the meeting rooms for the town hall. 109, we reviewed human resources with Marine Cast. That budget is down 10.7% if you don't include the salaries. They now use in-house video training, and line item 52150 is up 92%, and that is $25,000 for a new computer program to comply with federal privacy regulations. 120 Register of Voters, we met with Sharon Vecchiola and Fred DeCaro. Their budget is up due to state elections this year, and they have budgeted for one primary. If there's a second primary, they will have to come back for additional funding. One thing we did learn is that they must keep phone lines active all year round, although they're only used 2 days a year, which is a giant waste of money, but that's state regulation. 134 IT, we did not have a representative present. The director states he was not told he needed to be at the meeting. However, in the past, I have personally told him that he needed to be at the meeting anytime his department has anything on the call. We had several questions that went unanswered, one of which was a budget item for $100,000, a security review that's been in the past budget for several years and has not been done. We would like to know if that money has been returned to the town or if it's been spent elsewhere. Many members have encountered quite a bit of resistance and lack of cooperation from that department. 150 Town Clerk. We met with the Town Clerk. She needs additional staff due to layoffs, retirements, and sick time, and right now she's running short-staffed. They also run the vault, which is on the ground floor of the town hall, and that person must be certified by the state of Connecticut, so she cannot just put anyone in there. The good news is that conveyance fees are up, and I want to personally thank the town clerk and her office for what they do for the RTM. 201, Fire Department, we met with Chief Szynski. With the civilian dispatchers now being used, the town saved $262,000 in fire department overtime. The firefighter contract is now in negotiations, and they have working on the last best offers. Our water bill is about $1 million a year, and we pay for every foot of pipe in the town of Greenwich. We pay for that pipe repeatedly every year, even though we've already paid for it in the past, which is a waste of money, but it's state requirement. The King Street Station is moving forward. We received a $200,000 grant from the state of Connecticut to put in a 30,000-gallon cistern, which is a big holding tank of water, on Upper King Street for firefighting. We spoke about the new central station. Mr. Huffman from the BET spoke to us about the conditions that they recommended. District 1 was in favor of allowing the project to proceed as suggested by the BET. District 2, however, wanted to know how $24 million could be justified. There was no question that the building is in poor shape, but that's an enormous amount of money. He stated that the entire Hamilton Avenue School with all of its overruns was about the same price. The Glenville rebuild that's going on now is $4 million. The chief stated that 20% of the town's assessed property is within 1 mile of this station, and you're not just building a fire station, you're building a home for firefighters when they're working. 211 with the police department, we met with Chief Rydberg, Captain Kordick, and Mr. Hannigan. As always, Captain Kordick had a detailed presentation that covered every possible aspect of the police budget. Overall, their budget is up 1.5%. 94% of that is considered salaries. The remaining budget is down 18.8%, and the chief said he cannot keep doing that. He's going to need money soon to replace things. The big ticket items, they are moving data lines from the old building to the new building. The ammunition prices have gone up. The price of copper, lead, and brass have all gone up, which leads to increased ammunition price. Overtime is a large chunk of money. Currently, the police officers work 35 hours a week. That's due to an old contract. That requires him to use overtime to fill the vacancy, which uses up 13.7% of the overtime costs. Special details for visiting dignitaries come out of our pockets. They are not reimbursed by the Secret Service. Yearly harassment classes must be given to all officers, and he currently has the night crew coming in during the day on overtime to take the classes that are taught by, I believe it's Human Resources. It was recommended that we have the one Human Resources person work at night on overtime rather than bringing all the police in on the day working overtime. Other items, $236,000 for new patrol cars, and these are being replaced on the approved formula provided by the Fleet Department. We voted overall on the budget, 1200, and we voted on the resolutions, 1200.
Thank you. Ben DeMarco, Chair of our Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Fellow members, Transportation Committee met on Tuesday evening. Committee member teams met previously with the and reviewed the budgets of the Fleet, Parking Services, and DPW Highway and Traffic Divisions. And the reports were sent to all committee members along with the recommendation that no further questions seemed necessary. We also received information from the Board of Education on policies and challenges with regard to busing and walking routes to schools and impacts on the budget. Relying on our subcommittees and their detailed reviews, no department officials were asked to attend. However, Deputy Commissioner Dave Thompson did attend on his own accord. We were also joined by BET member Art Norton. And one additional note, fellow RTM member and chairman of the First Selectmen's Pedestrian Safety Advisory Committee, Kip Bergweger, arrived at the start of the meeting to offer to stay and answer any questions on sidewalk-related budget items. The committee considered the three budgets for which it is responsible: Fleet, Parking Services, and DPW Highway and Traffic, specifically for Howard Services to maintain or enhance town transportation facilities and equipment or contribute to external entities that provide needed services for residents, guests, and employees. No major concerns were expressed, and the vote on all was unanimous with all districts present. Just some notes on the budget that our committee members picked up. The Fleet Department is proposed or posted a minus 0.4% budget. New director Jay Domasek highlighted some operational plans for cost-cutting goals, such as reducing octane of fleet gasoline, procurement of more grants for additional hybrid vehicles, stripping reusable parts from vehicles that are not auctionable, shortening vehicle replacement cycles to reduce high maintenance costs, and better matching vehicles to job functions and monitoring miles traveled. And also measures to improve on-road safety and lessen environmental impact by better matching vehicles to the job functions and monitoring miles traveled, reducing emissions with cleaner fuels and vehicles, and promoting driver safety. The Parking Services budget, some things on that. It was 15.1% increase, but largely due to a capital improvement this year to maintain and improve the Benedict and Soundview lots, where last year there was only a minimal capital outlay. Some budget balancing goals there: increasing revenue through user-friendly pay systems and facility improvements, incremental increase in permit fees if it's approved, enhanced lot utilization and better enforcement, and reducing costs through the use of technology and operational efficiency. And again, to improve on-road safety, mitigate traffic congestion and environmental impacts, improve signage and other markings for all users, including handicap, provide convenient pay options for parking meters, install racks and other equipment for secure bicycle parking at railroad stations, and expand and monitor residential parking programs as warranted. The Public Works Department, Highway and Traffic Division comes in at minus 0.8%. A lean budget. I think we've gone through some of the capital items earlier, so we won't discuss that. But in our view, the committee felt that DPW is upholding its responsibility to maintain our roads and bridges to the highest degree it can with this budget. However, Deputy Commissioner Thompson related the department's intention to share information with the Transportation Committee going forward with regard to improvements to better accommodate all users. So we'll be looking at that as we go forward. And that's per the Complete Streets bill that takes effect this October. As I think I mentioned that it was actually unanimous. All districts, all 12 districts were present. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our committee reports, and now a word on procedure that will be followed tonight. The operative document will be the line item budget that was mailed to you in late March, early April, not what was mailed in the call envelope to you, because we have an opportunity to go major object code by major object code and make changes in the recommended budget. And so that document at the bottom, the first page, is dated March 22, 2010. It is labeled RTM, and it runs from page 1 through page 34. So that is what we will be following tonight. The first portion of that contains all of the major object codes, which I will read individually, and the remaining portion are what we call the budget resolutions, which we will take up after we have gone through each of the major object codes. Now, our authority tonight is that we can approve the recommended amounts that have been proposed by the BET. We can reduce those amounts or delete line items, and the reductions and deletions, there may be some limits to that depending on the department involved. Because what is currently before us is a resolution, it is a budget resolution, any attempt to change the recommended line item amounts will be considered procedurally to be a motion to amend. Because we do not permit in our practice secondary amendments, that is a motion to amend, a motion to amend. If one party desires to reduce a line item or delete it, and there is another party who believes that the reduction should be some different amount, we will take those motions to amend in order that they are made. If we were to reduce a line item, the prohibition on our adding money, we cannot add any monies to the recommended amounts that we receive from the BET. However, if we were to reduce a line item, we could restore monies to that line item, provided the total does not exceed the recommended amount that the BET has suggested. So it would be in order, as we debate a motion to reduce, if someone has another idea, to speak on that and indicate that a second motion to reduce might be offered. Before I get into each of the major object codes, I will call for any general comments directed to the budget in general. And at the end of those comments, we will then proceed to go code by code. I encourage anyone who intends to offer a motion to amend to remain in the room and be aware of where we are in the budget, because as I pass an item, absent some special circumstances, it is not my intention to return to it. After we have completed all of the amendments that we intend to make tonight to the particular major object codes, to the budget resolutions, we would then take a final vote on the budget resolution as amended. It is our obligation to adopt a budget by the middle of this month. If we were to fail to approve a budget tonight and we took no action prior to that deadline in mid-May, the budget as recommended by the BET would take effect. Right? So that procedurally is where we are. At this point, I will call upon anyone who desires to offer general comments on next year's budget. We will begin with Stephen Anderson, Chair of the Board of Education. If there is anyone else, I invite you to come down to the chairs in front. And I remind all speakers we do have a limit of 3 minutes in effect with some exceptions.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator and members of the RTM.
The Board of Education is in front of you tonight with a $131.2 million budget, which comes in under the BET guidelines. One quick clarification on a labor contracts point that apparently got a bit muddled in some of the RTM districts last week. The Board of Ed negotiates 3 labor contracts. We have negotiated one contract, the administrator's contract, GOSA, post the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy and the resultant credit crisis. In recognition of the economic situation the town is currently still working through, we pushed all the way to arbitration in our quest for a 0% GWI. Although the arbitrators ruled against us, we ended up with a 3-year contract with a fully loaded 1.09% per annum cost of contract. We are in the beginning stages of negotiating with our LIUNA Board of Ed unit, which is our professional assistants and security aides. Throughout this negotiation, we will negotiate fairly and respectfully, but we remain very cognizant of the town's economic situation and will negotiate accordingly and in full partnership with the town. With regard to the teacher's contract, we have had and will continue to have numerous discussions with this union, continuing to make them aware of our economic situation and looking to achieve as much budgetary relief as possible so as to help relieve pressure on not just the Board of Ed budget, but also the town budget. The board remains committed to making sure that we are doing all that we can do to help all of us get through this economic situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals who would like to make general comments directed to the budget? Hearing none, we will begin our line-by-line review on page 1. And again, let me say this. We obviously have heard that there will be motions to reduce the account relating to the Central Fire Station. There was a sign-up sheet left on the table as you entered the auditorium, and there is one at the front. So if anyone has not yet, who would like to speak on that topic, has not yet signed up, I invite you to do so. All right. If I do not see a hand as I read an item, please rise and call out and get my attention. 101, Representative Town Meeting. 102, Ethics. 104, Emergency Operations. 105, Office of the First Selectman. 106, Purchasing. 107, Administrative Services. 109, Human Resources. 111, Probate Court. 120, Registrar of Voters. 130, Finance. 131, Retirement. 134, Information Technology. 135, Assessor. 136, Board of Assessment Appeals. 139, Tax Collector. 140, Law. 150, Town Clerk. 161, Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. 170, Condemnation Commission. 171, Planning and Zoning Commission. 172, Conservation Commission. 173, Inland Wetland and Watercourses, one word. 174, Land Use Administration. 195, Commission on Aging. 196, Senior Center. That now brings us to the Fire Department. At this point, could someone retrieve the sign-up sheet outside and bring it down? Thank you very much. Actually, the capital will come later. 201, Fire Administration. 202, Fire Training. 204, Fire Marshal. 205, Fire Fighting Force. 206, Fire Apparatus and Equipment. 207, Fire Department Buildings. 208, Volunteers. Police Department. 211, Police Administration. 213, Police General Services. 216, Police Criminal Investigation. 217, Uniform Patrol. Department of Public Works. 301, Administration. 302, Engineering. 312, Highway, Streets, and Bridges. 315, Board of Ed Maintenance. 321, Waste Disposal. 345, Building Construction and Maintenance. 351, Building Inspection. Vehicle Maintenance. 380, Fleet. Health Department. 401, Administration. 405, Environmental. 410, Special Clinical Services. 415, Adult Maternal Child Services. 425, Laboratory. External Entities. 440, External Entities. Social Services. 501, Administration. 502, Adult and Family Services. 509, Aging Homemaker Only Services. That now brings us to the schools, and because of certain limitations on our ability to address line items, at this point, if there is any motion directed to that entire school budget, we will entertain that now. Is there any such motion? Hearing none, moving on to libraries. 701, Greenwich Library. 702, Peterson Wing. 710, Perrott Library. Parks and Rec. 801, Administration. 811, Recreation Supervision. 812, Organized Recreation. 814, Eastern Civic Center. 815, Community Centers. 816, Skating Rink. 817, Western Civic Center. 821, Parks and Trees Administration. 822, Parks and Playgrounds and Fields. 825, Equipment Maintenance. 829, Trees. 831, Marine Supervision. 832, Maintenance. 833, Beaches. 834, Harbors and Boating Facilities. Fixed charges. 901, Employee Benefits. Is that the item?
Yes, sir, it is.
Gordon Ennis, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As I mentioned earlier, the Finance Committee met on this issue, and a motion was raised and seconded to reduce fixed charges line 901 employee benefits, object code 57960, salary adjustment account, from $894,577 to $150,000, a reduction of $744,577.
All right. We don't have that level of detail in this document. So could I just get the number? When a motion to reduce is made, we do need the number to which we are reducing it, not so that we would be voting on a new number, not the motion to reduce. So this is going under 901, correct? Which has...
Yes, it is.
All right. Could someone do that math? You are reducing $744,000, correct?
To $150,000.
$750,000 you're reducing?
The reduction will be an amount so that the remaining amount in that account will be $150,000.
No. We don't have that number in this document. The number we have in that account is $68,113,063.
Oh, I see.
So,
well, I'll need a hand with the math to get it exactly right.
Right, but you are reducing $744,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Could we have that calculation done? $68,113,063 less $744,000.
$67,368,486. Courtesy of the BET. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Is that adequate, Mr. Moderator?
All right, could you repeat that, please? I have $67,369,063. Is that right?
360, what'd you?
Who's? Are we going to do this by hand? Does someone have a number, please?
I agree with your number.
Well, who doesn't agree with that number?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Dane.
I believe Mr. Ennis said the reduction was $744,577,
Is that correct?
That's correct.
which would equate to $67,368,486.
Is that the motion?
That's the motion, sir.
All right, the motion is to reduce Major Object Code 901 to the following number, $67,368,486. Discussion on that motion to reduce. John Crary, Town Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Members of the RTM, I rise to issue a rationale why we don't feel this would be a wise decision for the RTM to take. I label this as no good turn goes unpunished. In this particular case, since the Lehman disaster and the financial issues that we've been involved in for the last year and a half, the First Selectman's Office has directed all of the departments within the town to be very, very careful in terms of filling positions. And in fact, prior to actually filling any positions, they have to go through our office to get an okay to go forward. Now, when we did the incentive retirement system adoption, there was approximately 50 positions that were left vacant. Since then, we've been managing those vacancies to save funds. In the 9 months since the the retirement incentive was adopted, we've saved over $1,800,000, which actually does cover the full cost of the retirement incentive in terms of the health insurance cost and the retirement incentive costs. We are continuing to do that. The 17 positions that are on this list are included in our management plan. Now, the reason those positions have not been, there's been no request for filling, is because we've asked our department heads to not fill these positions so we could save these funds. It's not because we don't need them. In fact, most of these positions we will actually fill in the next 6 to 9 months. What we're trying to do is not fill them as soon as they become open. So we've left them open. We've worked with our department heads to meet their needs so they still can provide their services, but we've tried very hard to save some funds. If you look at this year's budget, you notice one of the key items in making next year's budget work is a $6 million item, which is a direct result of savings that we've been able to achieve by holding vacancies down, by holding down our operating costs throughout the entire town. And that $6 million is a critical element in making next year's budget work. So I encourage you not to eliminate these 17 positions. We will continue to manage them over the next 6, 9, 12 months, and most of them will be filled. Perhaps 4 or 5 will not, but most of them are needed. These are not things that are frivolous that we should eliminate. Thank you.
Further discussion on the Finance Committee motion to reduce Code 901. Michael Mason of the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Good evening, Mr. Moderators, members of the RTM, and guests. It's been a long time since I've addressed this body, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much. The Finance Committee has a motion before you to reduce $744,577 from fixed charges. This is salary money that the BET decided to move from certain departmental budgets, specifically for employment positions. These employment positions cover several different appointing authorities. It was indicated that there was no plan to fill. That's not really the exact case. During the BET deliberations, the BET chose to leave certain salaries in some departments, even though the positions were vacant. This has all been in keeping with the strategy to reduce headcount when possible, cross-train employees, look for ways to find efficiencies, yet maintain level services. This initiative came from the First Selectman. And the BET has been in agreement with this from the start and maintains that current position. If the $744,577 is reduced, the BET could choose to increase the amount in mill rate increase, and the funds would simply be in contingency. I do not know if that is the position the BET will take. The plan for reorganization, cross-training, and looking for operational efficiencies is moving. The discussion that are part of those initiatives, in my opinion, are best suited for the appointing authorities and the BET. An appointing authority would have these discussions at the RTM level, or they would simply choose to find the way to fund the position through other resources. I hope the RTM sees that this issue is an issue for discussion amongst the BET and the appointing authorities, and hope that you choose not to eliminate this appropriation from the fixed charges account. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to reduce. Richard Crowell, District 8, to be followed by Peter Tessier, First Selectman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I rise this evening to oppose this motion to reduce this amount of money from the fixed charge account. As I made you aware in our committee report, we did meet, Public Works Committee did meet with Amy Siebert, the Commissioner of Public Works, where the majority of these positions are being held. Number one, and I think most important, that these positions are the folks that we are going to look to carry out a number of the tasks that we are currently approving in tonight's budget. As was pointed out by the previous speakers and the town administrator, the departments have been asked to run lean and to run tight. And for their efficiencies, obviously, we're trying to plan and do a better job of looking at how these projects would come online. As these projects do come online, they are going to need the staff to accomplish the goals that we have set out for them and to maintain the level of service that this town has come to expect. I would also add that this reduction, although the BET, as mentioned by Mr. Mason, will be reviewing with the department heads the process and the need for these positions, the RTM has not. And we have stepped forward here to just come out and reduce these funds. We are not guaranteed that this money will go into a contingency fund. And by so doing, we have not taken a full evaluation of what the repercussions can be or would be, not only on the projects and the level of service that can be provided, but also on what the net benefit could be. We have not taken into account what may be needed to hire part-time staff, or to afford overtime, or to bring in consultants to finish some of the projects that we have. So we don't really have an accurate number as to what the benefits of these cost cuts could be. I think the BET has taken the proper approach and reviewing these cuts. As I mentioned earlier, the Public Works Department alone lost 20 members of its staff last year. They're still trying to figure out how they're doing a lot of their operations, getting used to who's fulfilling what roles, and getting through the number of projects that we had in last year's budget. They now know what's going to be before them in this current budget. They'll have a better idea of the staff members that they need to implement those. They can then go back to the BET, to the HR division, and say, okay, this is what we need. This is what we can wait a little longer on. Building inspection department, the inspections are still down. The number of permits coming in has not increased. The economy is not recovering that fast. We can wait a little longer on that. But it is a bit of a balancing act, and I think we should allow our department heads in the BET and the First Selectman's office to make the decisions in those areas on how to balance and provide us the services that we need. If we want to, in the future, continue to reduce headcount, then it should be something that's done on a comprehensive level where we look at the overall ramifications of not implementing a proper plan, and whereas we would reduce some of the projects we might require or some of the other services that we would provide. So I would hope that this evening that we would leave the funds as they are in the current budget, not reduce them, and not take the risk that the BET would not even put them in the contingency fund. And to that point, even if Ms. Siebert today had decided that she needed to fill that position, by the time she went through the paperwork and got to the BET and even through the RTM, we wouldn't see it until the September call, which means we wouldn't even be able to fill that position until October. I don't believe that's in good business practice. Thank you.
Peter Tessie, our First Selectman.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. I rise to oppose the reduction in this line item. I also would like to endorse the sentiments expressed by Mr. Krall, who I think very well articulated the reasoning for not pursuing this course of action. One of the more important elements of the process that's been set up by the BET that I think should not be overlooked is that by the fact that they are reviewing these position requests through a public meeting process, it gives constituencies who may have serious concerns about these particular position reductions an opportunity to hear firsthand what the consequences of the elimination will be, and for us to fully comprehend the impact to the town and the services we provide to our residents. As was noted, 7 positions come out of the Department of Public Works. The Department of Public Works absorbed a large proportion of the reductions last year. We were able to manage the limited resources and maintain the essential services of this vital department. However, further reductions of positions in this area will result in our curtailing the operations and the services we provide. And in my humble opinion, it runs counter to the objectives we've set forth as a town in terms of maintaining and improving our infrastructure. It is diametrically opposed to what we are trying to achieve, particularly when you look at the positions and the skills that are required for those positions. So I would encourage you to turn down this motion, keep faith in the BET, in the process that they've developed to review these. It's a very rigorous, laborious process, but we respect it and we will go through it, and it will give people an opportunity to hear firsthand the rationale for retaining the position, and if not retained, what the consequences will be in a public meeting setting. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Finance Committee motion to reduce Code 901. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Finance Committee motion to reduce 901, and proceed to poll your delegation. Now, we will continue reviewing subsequent major object codes. If after the vote is announced on this, if there is some need to return to it, we will do that. All right, so while we're voting, I will continue. We are on page 10, Code 902, Unemployment and Workers' Compensation. 908, Insurance. 911, Taxes for Town Properties. 926, Non-Public School Costs. 950, Repayment of Debt Principal. 999, Transfer to Other Funds. That brings us to the capital projects beginning on page 11. 106, Purchasing Department. 134, Information Technology. 206, Fire Apparatus. 208, Volunteers. 213, Police General Services. 219, Parking Services. 302, DPW Engineering. 312, Highway, Streets, and Bridges. 321, Waste Disposal. 345, Building, Construction, and Maintenance. Richard Crowell, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As mentioned earlier in our committee report, I'm offering a motion on behalf of the Public Works Committee, and we move that the downtown fire station public safety facility, as noted at line item 956-11028, be reduced from $22,050,000 by $750,000 for a net reduction of $21,300,000.
All right. There were some numbers there that apparently don't match what I was looking at. The current
23 million. I'm sorry, 23 million.
23,050,000.
Right.
You are proposing to reduce it to $750,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That being offered on behalf of our committee, it does not require a second. Are you giving any further report on that, or?
I can, Mr. Moderator.
Well, it's up
Yes.
to you. We'll hear any reports on that.
Thank you. I believe I gave most of the summary in the committee report. I would just mention that I believe it's been the consensus all the way through this process, and I know this project has been vetted through many committees and has gotten many hours of attention by all of us, that I don't think anyone in this room does not want to see the downtown fire station improved in some fashion. The concerns are raised, however, that we don't know what the new plan will entail. We've got some preliminary plans, but we have no final plan. Obviously, we have no plan for GEMS at this time, and we have the contingencies that were placed on this project by the BET, which have to be contended with. It was the feeling of the Public Works Committee that there needs to be the proper funds remaining in the account above and beyond just those to pay the commitment of the lease that is required for the fire administration. We came up with a sum of $550,000 after going through a number of discussions on how to come up with that. I'll save you the detail, to ensure that the project moves forward through the process within the town, so that the Public Works Department has the funds available to it and can complete the necessary planning requirements that we've requested. Thereby, we have made the motion to reduce it to an amount that would include some funds above and beyond just the lease obligations at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Discussion on the Public Works Committee motion to reduce. Peter Tessie, our first selectman.
Good evening once again. This time I find myself in counterpoint to Mr. Kroll. This evening, your actions on approval of the Town of Greenwich 2010-2011 fiscal year budget is the culmination of many months of preparation, presentation, and deliberation by professional staff and elected officials, all of us, in serving the needs of the citizens of the Town of Greenwich. We all want to exercise our best judgment in making these critical decisions on behalf of our fellow citizens. Life safety is the most important service provided by our government. Police, fire rescue, and emergency medical response are all essential to provide the quality of life we all are accustomed and depend upon for our well-being. As a former 10-year member of the RTM, I recognize the importance of the responsibilities this body has as the final authority of the expenditure of our tax dollars. Therefore, I am not surprised that so many of you are asking important questions related to the approval of the $23 million for the Central Fire Station and Administration Building, and comprehending the realities that Greenwich Emergency Medical Services Administration and operations do not fit into the same available space. The town's original intent was to incorporate all three of the emergency services into one central location. To date, we, former First Selectman, myself, BET, and RTM all embraced this concept. Since fiscal year 99-2000, we have approved a little over $47 million for the design, demolition, and construction of the police headquarters and parking garage, along with costs to house Central Fire Administration at its temporary Holly Hill Lane site. The first phase of this endeavor was completed on time and within budget. We then provided the funding to DPW Building Construction and Maintenance to work with GEMS and Fire Administration to determine their space needs based upon administrative, operational, and regulatory requirements. The determination of space requirements was coupled with the sensitivity to preserving architectural character, respecting zoning limitations, and financial realities. The net result from these many months of meetings of DPW, outside architects and engineers, GEMS board, executive director, the fire chief, is that meeting the present day needs, let alone any future needs of both organizations, is mutually exclusive at this site. This is undoubtedly a disappointing outcome for me, as it may be for all of you, particularly when you have your heart and mind set on a particular result. The BET, in its infinite wisdom, placed conditions on the appropriation of $23 million for the Central Fire Station Administration because it shared the same concerns about the change of circumstances and what the, quote, plan, unquote, will be for GEMS. In the RTM Public Works Committee report, it enumerated the costs associated with the estimated project cost, $23 million. So presently, the town, working through the First Selectman's Office, GEMS, board representatives, town administrator, town planner, are evaluating alternative options. Are there any town properties within close proximity to Bruce Place site to meet the need? Are there private properties available? GEMS has a talented board of directors who are actively pursuing potential sites for a centralized administration operations facility and working collaboratively with the town in this endeavor. The BET is not going to release the condition placed on the $23 million unless it is satisfied an adequate plan is in place to provide for GEMS' need. Therefore, unless you do not have faith in the BET to ensure there is an adequate plan, or do not believe the professional architects and engineers who determined the space requirements of both the Central Fire Administration Station and GEMS exceed the space available and is mutually exclusive, then I would respectfully request you to vote to proceed with the approval of the $23 million to advance the long-identified and needed Central Fire Station and Administration Facility for the citizens of the town of Greenwich, and keep our town moving forward to fulfilling not only its capital plan, its 10-year plan of conservation and development, but most importantly, the life safety and property protection of our residents. I thank you for your time and volunteer service to our town.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to reduce. Our Fire Chief, Peter Szynski.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Honored members of the town meeting. The fire department is certainly appreciative of the efforts that many of you have made with respect to this project, and I say that sincerely. We respect this process. We have faith in this process. A simple analogy. When we bring recruits into the fire service, we teach them to deal with fear by relying on their colleagues with faith and trust. When dealing with issues of apprehension, which, believe it or not, we do face on a regular basis, we deal with that apprehension by taking risk versus benefit analysis. You probably all realize by now, as elected officials, you're very much a part of this fire department. Tonight, I ask you to take that same premise when dealing with your apprehension. Have faith in your colleagues. Have trust in your colleagues. The Board of Estimate and Taxation has conditioned the construction funding for this Central Firehouse project. As stewards of the town finances, I firmly believe they are not going to issue a blank check for this project. They won't write it. I can guarantee that. The Department of Public Works, through Amy Siebert, Al Manelli, have been working diligently to keep this task and project moving. They continue to consult with subject matter experts. The fire department itself is rich in history and tradition. We certainly look forward to achieving that core value by working with commissions and committees on the historical value of this station. We fully realize that the space we design needs to be maintained for years to come, so we will not overbuild this facility. Some brief comments on the GEMS issue, and these are not a school. Charlie and I are very close in public safety. GEMS is a gem, but it was never their intent to respond their ambulances out of the public safety complex. They were always going to continue, at least in the interim, to rent 1111 East Putt. They continue to look for space to renovate or build a section for their ambulances and their response capabilities. Questions of refurbishment and replacement of the building have been answered by Al Manelli, not by his own details, but by forensic experts that have come in and given two options to the town to refurbish. They cost upwards of $9 million, or they would be legitimately a roll of the dice in case the refurbishment did not work. The only possible way to go with this project is to rebuild, and to rebuild on a smaller footprint with great significance to the historical value of this building. We've heard a lot of individual ideas over the past several months. Fourth floor, basements, cantilevered upper floors, limestone, no limestone, bridges across roads, road closures, relocation. It would be impossible to deal in great detail with all of your individual opinions. I'm sure tonight I could get 230 individual opinions on how to go. There is no value to add additional conditions to the BET. I'm concerned, as is the entire department, that this continued analysis will result in paralysis. We just can't deal with that. We could face additional costs and increases, costs of borrowing, materials, and labor. And lastly, I'd like to leave you with what is the effect on the fire department operations, because it will be on multiple fronts. The morale and our continuing effort to lead the department will suffer greatly if there is any interpretation that this project may be delayed or will require additional steps to achieve the funding. You've all seen the conditions that our firefighters have been living in. They've been extremely patient. I offer to you tonight that the sandbags our emergency forces place should be in the case of emergencies and disasters for our citizens. They shouldn't be placing sandbags to protect their first floor from the raw sewage coming up into their building. The efficiency of our operations is continually hampered by the structure that we are in, operating out of Holly Hill. We cannot continue to offer quality service by being separated. We invest heavily as a town and as a department in volunteer recruitment and retention. Don't lose sight of the fact that 2 volunteer companies operate out of this station, Amagerone and Hosen Chemical. I reported last year to Town Services that Hosen Chemical was making a comeback to their active level of status. Don't stifle them by leaving them in a building that's not appropriate. You as a body have recognized the state of disrepair of our fire stations. You've done that previously. Coscob renovation is completed. Glenville is in progress. Sound Beach and Byram have been bookmarked in the capital budget. Further delays just compound the problems and costs for our department. I can tell you firsthand that I've been throughout the county, the state, and the nation as an executive fire officer. I've seen what departments have for stations and for headquarters. And I'll be polite tonight and simply reiterate what I've said before, that our conditions are not acceptable. Again, we have great respect for this town meeting, our elected representatives. I honestly feel this dialogue is healthy, this dialogue is productive. Most importantly, at the end of the day, I'm personally confident that you will be comfortable with the conditions that the BET has placed, and you will continue to be an active part of what should be and will be a source of pride for our community, and rightfully so, the Central Fire Station. Our volunteer and career firefighters continuously step up to the task for our community. This town meeting is an integral part of that response. Tonight, I implore you, as active participants, to step up and return that vote of confidence and fully fund this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew Marzullo, our selectman.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, town leaders, Central Fire Station needs our help. The men and women who occupy this building work and live in conditions that are long overdue for extensive repair. That repair may come in the form of a complete teardown, or it may come in the form of saving parts of the existing building. That's still to be determined. On a personal note, I hope the town elicits the advice of the preservation, historical networks, and work together to retain a structure that many feel is worth saving. But that debate is for another time. What is before you tonight is approving a $23 million allocation that would allow the process to continue and begin work on a building that borders deplorable. If not approved tonight and full funding is not made available, the reality is this will just further delay a project that is inevitable. It will then come back before this body in some form at a later date, causing more delays and possibly more costs. I think it's fair to say that most of us, if not all of us in this room, agree that Central Fire Station needs our attention. I also think it's vividly clear that the Central Fire Station is falling apart. What is not so clear among many is the uncertainties of a multi-million-dollar capital project. With that said, and whatever the outcome of tonight's vote, I, for one, would never question the commitment Greenwich has to the individuals wearing a uniform. Emergency service personnel who work and volunteer in this town are professional and dedicated with one mission: to keep us safe. This town we live in will still be well served tomorrow, no matter what the outcome is tonight. It's because of the firefighters, police officers, and ambulance personnel who come through that building every day, and it's not about the building. So I will once again ask this body to please vote in favor of fully funding this capital expense. At the very least, if you are thinking about or are committed to deleting or reducing funding, please consider the conditions set forth by the BET. The BET has a responsible mechanism in place that ensures accountability, and monies will not be allocated until those questions are answered. Answers to questions and concerns like why a public safety building that was supposed to incorporate all 3 emergency services can now only fit 2. Questions about final cost and questions about architectural design. I share these questions, I share these concerns, but in the end I still conclude that public safety is the responsibility of local, state, and federal government, and also conclude that Central Fire Station remain of the utmost importance and must remain top priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to reduce. David Tice, our selectman, be followed by Frank Pauzluzny, District 8.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM. I couldn't agree more with the sentiments of my fellow selectmen. I don't think that we should shortchange our uniformed services in any way, shape, or form, and that we can't put a price tag on the need for the safety of our residents. The basic needs of our paid men and volunteers cannot be overlooked. As an example, on a recent town visit to the Central Fire Station, I was struck by a panel that exists outside the shower area that goes back and forth. It says men in shower, women in shower. I mean, I think that speaks volumes about the need for a new public safety building, a new firehouse. And I don't think there's any reason to delay this project any longer. It's something that needs to happen, it needs to move forward, it needs to move forward quickly. So I support, as I said, the sentiment of my fellow selectmen, and encourage you to vote for this initiative. It's very important for a variety of reasons. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Frank Pauzluzny, to be followed by Richard Holleran, District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening. I had the benefit of visiting and having a tour of the fire department this weekend. And though as we're talking about architectural features and $23 million for a future plan, the thing I found most appalling, most concerning to me tonight is the current specific conditions of this facility being unsafe, and in some cases almost uninhabitable. I was pointed out on a 2nd or 3rd floor, I can't remember the building specifically, floor by floor, that there were 3 showers, only 3 functioning showers, because the 4th shower that needed a head repair has been capped off and crippled by some town facilities maintenance person. And the footstep leading into the shower stalls is broken tile that can cut your foot. Should a firefighter actually go into the neighboring shower, exhausted after fighting a fire and carrying heavy equipment on a hot day and trying to replenish himself, he could literally slip on a slippery floor and fall and cut himself on a razor-sharp tile edge in the shower right next door to him. Something like that is deplorable for me to have witnessed in our town. Something I wouldn't tolerate in my neighborhood. I would certainly repair for an elderly member of my neighborhood, which I've done at no cost for no money. And the other thing is, I keep hearing about comprehensive plans and planning, yet I keep coming into this facility of the RTM and hearing about comprehensive plans, but there are no comprehensive plans. I was told during my tour that part of the comprehensive plan of amalgamating facilities and sharing a training center with the police department facility, which is now complete, may no longer be viable, that the large training center area they required as part of their need is maybe unavailable to them because of the sensitive positioning of it in a detectives bureau with sensitive information around we could understand. That may not make it available to them because the training center ended up in that building. Well, the comprehensive plan never occurred. I don't understand why we have so many comprehensive plans that are so incomprehensible. One of the things we need to do to guarantee that our firefighters get a facility that's adequately designed, not poorly designed like Hamilton Avenue that cripples its side streets every time children come and go, and not over budget because there's no oversight like our police department that maybe could have given us more than enough money for their renovations so they're in a suitable facility under suitable conditions right now at no more cost. And I'd like to also confront the fact that with all these things going on, I don't understand why we're always talking about comprehensive plans, and I see no plans right now. We've been talking about this for years. I'm an industrial design engineer.
20 seconds.
I've seen more plans for a pool house worth $5,000 in front of me to evaluate, to critically review it, and to discuss it and get it to move forward from that point. Until we have their input and some things on paper, we have not started anything, no matter how much money we throw at it. They deserve better than that.
Thank you. Richard Holloran, to be followed by Rick Crowell.
Mr. Moderator, I also toured the facility on Saturday with Daniel Natali, firefighter who may well be here in this room tonight. Yes, District 11. The first impression was that that was a very solidly built building. There wasn't a single crack in the walls that I could determine on the first floor. There was hardly any cracks in the floor. There was a tremendous problem with leakage from a flat roof that obviously was a source of leakage onto the ceiling and probably also was a source of leakage onto certain walls. There was a tremendous difficulty with movement of air in the second and third floor, resulting in a very stuffy atmosphere, which was not conducive to human habitation. But these are things which can be contained, which can be remedied. Flat roofs, which this building has, are endemic to problems of leakage if they are not inspected every year and attended to according to need. We've seen this in Hamilton Avenue School. There was a flat section there of the original building, and that's where there was some leakage. The town simply did not put money into the upkeep of that building or of this particular building. The matter of the overflow of sewage on the first floor is probably a matter that should be attended to out in the street where the sewage flows and not inside the building. You don't have to build a new building to repair a sewage problem like that. I think we should give that all consideration. This is a very fine building. I grew up in a building built in exactly the same year as this building and in Greenwich, and it was highest building standards, and I think this building was also built to highest building standards. However, the town has studiously, with sometimes I think probably with malice aforethought, let the upkeep go by the road. Thank you very much.
Rick Crowell, to be followed by Anthony Discoli. Mr. Crowell, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I speak on myself individually, not on any representation of the Public Works Committee. I would like to emphasize the point that this project, if it doesn't come back to us through the financing approval that we're going through this evening, more than likely will come back to us through the MI process. With that being said, I think we're going to see this project one way or another, and I would prefer, in my opinion, to see it as it came through the BET process. And once the BET was satisfied that their conditions had been met, and we've been told by the chairman of the BET that if the project comes through within the next calendar year, that they will look at it as an interim appropriation, something that we have not seen in the past. So we are making some great exceptions because we have determined the sensitivity, the priority, the need for this project. Nobody is questioning that. We all understand it. But we have put into place over the last several years a process that has worked out very well. And we can see it even this evening how smoothly this budget process has gone and the amount of time that people have put into preemptive planning and going through reviewing the budget process to make sure that we had a comprehensive look at it. I think that's been effective. And I believe in this case, the BET has put in some effective restrictions on the funding that when the project comes through and they believe it's ready, we will get to see it from a funding perspective, not from just a planning perspective. This will happen, I believe, in the future. So I would support the current motion to keep in the $750,000, reduce the appropriation to that amount, so that the funds are there to continue planning and to meet the needs of the BET, and that we'll see it at the proper time when the interim appropriation comes in. We can approve it. It's not going to add any time in my opinion, a meeting or two at most. During that time frame, the planning and ongoing permitting and everything else that needs to be completed for the project can continue. So I think this is a process that we put into place, something that we should work within and support what we have in front of us. Thank you.
Anthony Discoli, District 12, to be followed by Paul Curtis, District 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow RTM, selectmen. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I'm on the BOC. I also had a chance to tour the facilities. And I just wanted to make a couple of factual points. If we reduce this budget this evening, it's a really important fact to highlight that this project will not be delayed. The bonding process occurs in January. And what the $550,000 that we're appropriating for A&E is going to give Al Manelli and his team time to put a plan together, an actual plan that we can see, put a budget together and what this thing is going to cost. And when we return back in November or December call, we have our obligation, as Mr. Walco had pointed out in the beginning of our meeting, to follow through with our fiduciary responsibilities as an RTM body. We just need to know what this project is going to be defined as, what it's going to cost, and how it's going to be implemented. So I'm not up here saying that we don't need to do this, that we don't need a new fire station. That's a whole nother matter. But the point is, for our fiduciary responsibility as RTM, we really need to understand what this project is, and it will not be delayed one day as long as we follow the process and it comes back to us in November or December. So I just want to make that comment.
Paul Curtis, District 8, to be followed by Alicia Schroeders. District 9.
Ladies and gentlemen of the RTM, I'll follow Mr. I wish I could say his last name, from my colleague from District 12 with the second point. The first one is that he said there would be no delay in the project, which is true. There also will be no impact, according to the BET representative who appeared at District 9's meeting. There will be no impact to the budget or the mill rate or the bonding for other projects. So there is little or no impact on any of the projects that are currently outstanding for this. My own personal opinion is I'd really like to see some plans before I'm going to put the citizens' money, tie it up in $23 million. Thank you.
Elisa Schroeders, to be followed by Christine Edwards. Is Elisa Schroeders? Is she here? Okay. All right, Christine Edwards, to be followed by Roger Laurie.
Thank you, colleagues here from the town, from our guests, from the fire department, police department, GEMS, moderator, everyone. We're very interested to make sure that our police, firemen, GEMS, all are in safe and reasonable and wonderful housing, administrative offices, everything. I have to say I'm very appalled to hear that there's tile that is razor sharp that hasn't been replaced, that we are continuing a tradition in this town of not doing proper maintenance. If this is a dangerous building, then we have to really act, of course, as quickly as possible, but not without a plan. I remember when the police department was coming forward, hearing the comment, "We've waited long enough, let's do it now." Well, we all want to do it now, but we want a plan. And there was at least a better plan at that time of what we were going to go into. We need to solve what the problem may be to make a full campus, maybe make use of the old town hall, maybe put another glass corridor, which exists in the police department, and bridge over the third floor, use a few floors of that town hall. But have a real vision of what we can do to have a complete facility, and understanding that this can still come before us as an interim appropriation and be able to solve all the things we need to create appropriate timeline for bonding gives us a little breath of time to make sure we do the right thing. Repair those tiles, please. Do not let them remain razor sharp. We could certainly get the plumbing done. If we need to put porta toilets or move some modules over in some way, maybe we have to look at doing that. There's got to be a way to make this work in an interim way to make it safe. And if we can't do that, then we have to look at how our town is functioning. But there's no way that we should allow any of our buildings to fall into this level of disrepair. And I think, if anything, we have to come together as a town for RTM, for committees, for really having a vision to protect the facilities and the spaces that we have. There's no reason for this to have become under such poor repair, and we have to look at why that happened and change that planning. In the meantime, let's make sure that we put something together that's going to really create a wonderful environment that we can service the entire town and provide for the health, safety, and security for the very people who are working in these buildings. I don't want to see any cuts. I don't want to see any falls. And we should make sure that tomorrow somebody goes out and repairs those tiles and plumbing. Thank you.
Roger Laurie, to be followed by Karen Vasiliotis.
Fellow RTM members, I rise to agree with the fact that we should reduce the 23 down to 750, and I want to give you a few short points why. One, we haven't seen a definitive plan of really any kind. I think before anyone votes for a $20 million appropriation, you should know what you're voting on. Two, the RTM will see this once again, many times possibly, so this will not be our only chance at it. Three, the side issue of the preservation of the original limestone is really almost a non-issue. By preserving what few people consider a major asset, by preserving it, we'll be spending another $2.3 million at its minimum. There is a significant question whether this is really needed. Finally, fourth point is that if there are elements in the building that make our firefighters have a problem in terms of their daily life, that should be immediately repaired by the town maintenance department. That was said by the previous speaker. I think everyone would agree with that. And finally, lastly, concerning GEMS, I was among those who set GEMS up about 25 years ago, and I want to give you some idea of the progress of GEMS. 25 years ago, it was a volunteer firehouse-based taxi service offering basic life support. What that means is that if you had a problem, what was then GEMS, although it wasn't called that, would attempt to get you to the emergency room as quickly as possible. In the 25 years since, GEMS has evolved into a professional force offering advanced life support in the ambulance, which means that service begins as soon as they pick you up, not when you arrive at the emergency room. They've made significant progress. There's really no reason why they should be located in the same facility as the other public safety elements. Finally, lastly, there are some interesting ideas out there that I haven't heard spoken about at all. Specifically, one brought forth by John Dolan of this group, which is to completely build a totally new building across from the Boys and Girls Club on the parking lot, on part of the town parking lot. Ideas like that deserve to be considered, and his idea is to possibly put GEMS into this original fire building. So these are ideas that we should think about and possibly wait before we vote $20+ million. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Vasiliotis, to be followed by Whitney Welch.
I may be missing something here, but the proposed reduction in this capital budget is not intended to delay the project. It is merely intended to assure RTM members that there is a plan in place where there now is none. As proposed, we have no idea how our taxpayer dollars are going to be spent. I think I can confidently state that the majority, if not all of this body, supports the need to renovate or, in the alternative, build a new fire station. There is no question that the current conditions are abysmal. The fire department deserves better. There is no argument there. However, this project, as other projects, should have a plan that is in place. We should not rely on the BET for that plan. The RTM is the approving body. The RTM should know what we are approving. There is nothing to prevent the fire department from coming back in June, if need be, for an interim appropriation if the plan is in place. I urge you to vote for this reduction. The reduction still supports our fire department by allowing the planning to continue, but more importantly, it supports our fiduciary responsibilities to the citizens of our town.
Whitney Welch.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Whitney Welch. I've been a career firefighter in the Greenwich Fire Department for 21 years, and I've worked at the Central Firehouse for most of that time. The Central Firehouse has been in disrepair since I started working there more than 20 years ago, and over the last several years, conditions have only gotten worse to the point where it's truly a disheartening place to work, not to mention unhealthy and unsafe. I can tell you from experience that the problems go beyond the upkeep and maintenance of an aging building and go as far as crumbling walls and ceilings, a leaky roof, mold throughout the building, plumbing that doesn't work, floor drains that let sewage in, not out, rats and mice, exposed wiring, and an exterior that's falling down, and many other needed repairs that have been left undone for far too long. While some of these problems may seem trivial or things that we should learn to deal with, after all, we are paid to do what we do. Our job is unique in that we spend 24 hours at a time at the firehouse. It becomes our home away from home. While much of our time is spent responding to emergencies and performing our other duties, the rest of it is spent living in the firehouse, doing everything from cooking meals, working out, eating, and sleeping when we can. As a result, areas like dormitories, the kitchen, bathroom, and shower facilities are an integral part of our work environment. In addition to health and maintenance problems in the building, the space and layout of the Central Firehouse is no longer practical for our 21st century department. The garage doors are too small for our modern fire trucks, leaving just inches to spare when driving in and out. Our administration is housed separately from us in an office building across town. Male and female firefighters must share bathroom facilities and sleeping quarters. Our kitchen is too small for the crews stationed there, and we don't have an adequate meeting or training area. During the open house this past Saturday, numerous RTM members stopped in for a tour. One member summed it up best when she said that if her son or daughter were going away to college and the facilities looked like this, she would not let them go there. The last point I'd like to make is one that many people seem to be overlooking, is that we're not just talking about our living conditions. The firehouse is a public building open to everyone, and the Central Firehouse has particularly visitors every day that use the facility. Whether it's a mother who brings her kids to see the fire truck or get a car seat installed, a motorist who stops by looking for directions, or a passerby who just needs to use the restroom. There is always a steady flow of people in and out, and the building should be safe, presentable, and functional for them as well. Space limitations and safety concerns the last couple of years have already prevented us from giving firehouse tours to the local school kids during Fire Prevention Month in October. So when you vote tonight, I think I speak for all the career firefighters when I say that we need a newer, safer, healthier, more user-friendly, and practical work environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Public Works Committee motion to reduce Code 345. Public Safety Facility. If you are in favor of reducing this from $23,050,000 to $750,000, you should vote yes if you want to make that reduction. If you are opposed to that reduction, you should vote no. All right, we do have the vote on the motion to eliminate funds that were placed in fixed charges regarding certain vacant positions. Those in favor, 47, opposed 161, abstaining 5. that motion to reduce has failed. Interestingly, that total vote comes to 213 plus at least one non-voting member, which in my memory is the largest attendance that I recall. We'll have to go back and check, but congratulations to all who came. All right, so we are currently voting on the motion to reduce the funds for the fire station project. We will continue while we are voting. So we left off on page 11. Any further motions addressed to Code 345, DPW building construction and maintenance? Page sorry, that was page 11. Page 12. 440, external entities. I ask that the voting be conducted silently so that all can hear the proceedings. Thank you. Code 680, Board of Education. 701, I'm sorry, Jim Boutel, District 8. This is on Board of Education.
Mr. Moderator, fellow members, I know that the Rules Committee will address Scrivener's errors and legal issues as it comes to the resolutions later, but I have a concern about Code 680-956. If you look at the description, it's architectural and engineering for 2008-2009 projects, many of which have already been completed. I spoke to both the chair of the Board of Ed and Mr. Mason. It's my understanding that that account should, in this budget, read A&E for 11-12. Given the explanation Mr. Walco gave earlier of planning then spending, these would be programs that we intended to fund the construction in 11-12. So the account, if I may offer the amendment, the account description should read A&E for 11-12. I think because many of the 08 projects are completed, there could be a legal challenge if we do not change this account description.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to make that change. Is there any objection to that proposed amendment? Hearing none, that may be adopted upon unanimous consent. Any further motions addressed to the Board of Education capital project? Moving on, 701 Greenwich Library. 822 Parks and Rec, Parks, Playgrounds, and Fields. 832 Marine Maintenance. 833 Beaches. 834 Harbors and Boating Facilities. 999 Fixed Charges. We're on to page 13, Sewer Maintenance Fund. 361 DPW Sewer Maintenance. 361 Sewer Improvement. 670 School Lunch. 219 Parking Services. 318 DPW Highway Traffic Engineering. 317 Highway Parking. 450 Nathaniel Witherell. 824 Griff Harris Golf Course. 131 Other Post-Employment Benefits. All right, that brings us to the end of the major object codes. Why don't we allow you to, we'll await the result of that pending vote before proceeding to the budget resolution, so if you'd like to get up and stretch, now would be the time to do that. We have the vote on the Public Works Committee motion to reduce regarding the Central Fire Station. So if everyone could please return to their seats, we will continue with our meeting. two at once, yes. Yep. All right. This was the motion raised by our Public Works Committee. The account code appeared on page 11. This was 345, 956, 1128, New Buildings Public Safety Facility, and that was a motion to reduce it to $750,000. Those in favor, 180, opposed 30, abstaining 2. That motion has carried. All right. That brings us now to the conclusion of the line item review of our budget for the coming fiscal year. We will now turn to the budget resolutions and pick up any amendments that need to be made. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, last Monday evening, the Legislative and Rules Committee took up the budget and bonding resolutions, and after a careful reading of the resolutions by Legislative and Rules Committee member Mary Ferry, we made a number of changes, some of which are in the form of Scrivener's errors, others are small changes. All of these changes were discussed with Jim Campbell and Nancy Barton of the BET Legal Committee, who attended our meeting, and they were in agreement with all of Ms. Ferry's suggested changes. There was a PDF file that was sent out along with my committee report, so most of you presumably have seen the changes that are to be made. Mr. Moderator, those changes begin on paragraph 27, with the paragraph beginning, "The police department is authorized to," and the words to be inserted between "to" and "accept" are "apply for and," so that it reads, "The police department is authorized to apply for and accept grants." Similarly, on paragraph 32, you also add that same language, "apply for and," between the words "to" and "accept," so that it reads, "The first selectman is authorized to apply for and accept grants." The Health and Human Services Committee Chair authorized me to make the amendment to paragraph 35, which is on there are 3 changes to the 3rd line of paragraph 35. The word "and" after the word Connecticut is deleted. There is a comma inserted after government and another comma inserted after foundations, so that that line reads, "State of Connecticut, comma, the federal government, comma, and nonprofit corporations and foundations, comma." On paragraph 39, subparagraph D, the last line begins, "To become appropriations that the Board of Education," delete the word "may" and insert the word "shall." Similarly, in the next subparagraph E, the second line says, "Comptroller may add to the appropriate accounts," delete "may," add the word, and insert the word "shall." On paragraph 49, the last line, it refers to the Board of Estimate. It should be Board of Estimate and Taxation. The words "and taxation" are added. In the additional provisions on paragraph 3, C refers to all appropriations for salary and benefit accounts for the fiscal year 2009-2010. That should be 2010-11. And in the next line, it again says the town's 2009-10 table of organization. That should be deleted and inserted in its place, 2010-11. 2 paragraphs below that, the sentence that begins with "it is resolved." Again, there's a reference to fiscal year 2009-2010 that should be deleted and inserted in its place, 2010-2011. On the next page of the resolutions, there are object codes. The second from the bottom, 361 sewer, it describes a position as inflow and inflow inspect. It should read infiltration and inflow inspector, so that requires a deletion of inflow and inserting in its place infiltration and adding OR to the word inspect. And that is it.
Great. That being offered on behalf of our committees does not require a second. Is there any objection? Well, first of all, is there any need to repeat any of that? All right. Is there any objection to those changes? Those amendments may be adopted upon unanimous consent. Further motions addressed to the budget resolution. Richard Crowell, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As part of our deliberation, obviously, with the reduction in the fire building now approved, we also have to do some housekeeping to the bonding resolutions. The amount that was originally appropriated for bonding was $43,578,000. We are reducing that amount by $22,300,000 for a total of $21,278,000. That number, Mr. Moderator, appears on 3 pages within the resolutions. First, on page 21, where it reads, "Further resolve that the attached resolutions concerning grants and other receipts resolutions authorizing borrowing of $43,578, that amount should now be reduced to $21,278,000. On page 33, at the very top of the page, in the bold letters, where it reads, "Resolution authorizing borrowings in the aggregate amount of," and again reads $43,578, that amount should be reduced to $21,278. Further down the page, under where it states "be and it is hereby resolved," section 1, it will read, "In the capital budget for fiscal year 2010-2011, $43,578, again, should be reduced to read $21,278. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Is there any objection to those changes? Hearing none, that they may be adopted upon unanimous consent. Paul Curtis, District 9.
I forgot to bring this in. On page 4 of the call, under General Government Office of the First Selectman, item number 7, it should read the Friends of Greenwich Public Television Incorporated, as it is.
All right, whoa. We're not working on the call, so.
No, I'm sorry. Then I can give it to you in the budget resolutions, General Government Office of the First Selectman.
All right, are you talking about, do you have a page number on the document that we're working with tonight?
Page 22, thank you.
Okay.
Item 7.
Right.
Needs to read the Friends of Greenwich Public Television Incorporated.
Okay, so take out the word community and insert public.
Yes.
All right. Any objection? That may be adopted upon unanimous consent. Are there any further motions directed to our budget resolutions? Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Item number 3, fiscal year 2010-2011 annual budget, and proceed to pull your delegation. Since that is the final item to come before us tonight, we will await the vote before proceeding to adjourn. We have the result of the vote on next year's budget. Those in favor, 204, opposed 6, abstaining 0. The budget has passed. There being no further business to come before the meeting, this meeting stands adjourned upon unanimous consent. Thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.